Are you a technician who wants to set yourself apart? Then the Trusted Technician podcast is for you. I'm Derek Hoferter, coach and trainer at SBE, and on this podcast, we will have experienced HVAC coaches and trainers, as well as top-performing technicians, all sharing their tips and strategies to help you be more successful. Welcome back to the Trusted Technician podcast. This is Coach Derek. Today's guest is John from Alexander Services in North Carolina. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How's it going?
So it's great. John, to get started, and so everyone can kind of get to know you, how did you get into being an HVAC technician?
Well, basically, I don't have a great story of awesomeness. My dad was doing it. I didn't know what to do with my life. And I just was like, you know what? Instead of working in the kitchen, let's try this.
That's as good of reason as any reason. How long ago was that then that you started out as a technician?
That was it's maybe around 8 years or more.
Okay. That's a decent amount of time. So what do you enjoy the most about being a technician?
I think it's fixing things. Satisfying to be able to, take something that wasn't working and now it is. Or sometimes if you're just doing a tune-up, you know that system is at its peak performance and it's working exactly how it should.
Yeah, that's a common answer here on the podcast. You just like fixing things, you like helping people.
Yeah.
Right? You kind of get to be a superhero, like firefighter of sorts, right? People in distress and you go and help them out. So I definitely view HVAC techs as superheroes. What do you find to be the most challenging part of being an HVAC technician?
I don't know exactly because for me, when you find a difficult call, that's challenging until you solve it and then it's rewarding.
Mm.
So I don't know that it's that.
Okay. So kind of the challenging aspect of it kind of bleeds over into what you enjoy about it.
Right.
Also. Yeah, I think that's fair. Right? Because with no matter what you do, right? There's things you love, there's things you don't love as much, that goes into it. Yeah, I like that answer of it's only a challenge until you figure it out.
Right.
Thanks. So, John, one of the reasons why you're on the podcast is you do well, right? You attend our award ceremonies and get recognized. I think last year you were knocking on that door of joining the $1 Million Tech Club. So, John, has it always been this way, or has it been like a process of continually getting better and improving? Did you have times when it was more of a struggle than it is now? Kind of fill us in a little bit on your journey of getting to where you are now.
Well, I guess the journey for me, there's always little things you learn as you're going. It's kind of like sometimes you need to learn when to ask questions, when it's better to be quiet. I think how I started was working at a different company, and I had learned some techniques there that were kind of like they were working. And then when I came to Alexander, then started training on the FBE process, it was like everything was starting to come together. It was like the same questions that I might have been asking sometimes, there was a process to it. It enabled consistency and it kind of worked right away. There's been some things though that maybe I'm not as consistent about. And as I'm learning to be more consistent with those things, it's definitely working a lot better.
Okay, so the consistency is you think your journey, right? Like
Yes.
so right out of the gate, some things work, some things didn't. So being more consistent about doing more of the things that work and less of the things that don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for one example, I had a customer that she wasn't home. The husband was around. He was working on his projects. I saw him like once or twice, and then he actually left. As I'm working through the system, I was texting pictures, and short story of the call is sold the system there because I was texting pictures to the wife, and he was like, just text her because I'm working on stuff, and that was something that I did for a couple months, the text and pictures. I don't know why I stopped. And it was just like, if I have at least that one win that wouldn't have happened without it, why wouldn't I keep doing it?
Yeah, I'm not a psychologist, to answer your question of if something's working, why would I stop? But I have a theory, and so well, I'll test out my theory with you. And
Okay.
because again, this is personal as well. So I sometimes wonder if when we're having success with something, we start to think that it's not actually that thing that we're doing, it's us. Like we're just becoming so good
Mm.
that that the success is happening, not the thing that we're doing, like texting photos. So it's like, hey, that's a lot of extra work to do this thing.
Yeah.
So it's me, right? And so I'm just gonna do my thing, right, on all that. And it's a little bit of like a false confidence per se in my theory, or a little bit of like it just became kind of like blended into things, and we didn't really isolate the thing that caused the improvement, and we lose sight of that. So I don't know. So what do you think of my theory here?
I mean, I could see how it applies. I mean, it's like, you know, the process, the consistency, those things give us the appearance of caring and stuff like that. And when we forget to do those things and we do think that it's us, we start to lose that edge of where the customer's view of us is 5 stars. We care, we're involved in them. It's not just this is what you should do because I'm saying it,
Yeah, yeah,
or this is what's going on because I'm saying it.
right. So then if that theory has some type of merit to it, right, all of the little details, right, that get us the result, unless just, because it's just our like X factor, right, type of thing. So
Right.
then that kind of brings back to your point about consistency of
Yeah.
always doing the things that work all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it kind of comes back, I think, to a little bit like mindset and our attitude about things. Like, what are your thoughts about mindset as far as, being a technician?
That might be one of the more hidden challenges. Maybe not something that we actively know to address every day, but our mindset plays into each of our calls. We don't know what that customer wants. We don't know what they like. We don't know what their goals are. And if we have a mindset of we just want to hurry through this call or it's cold outside or whatever, they might be of the mindset of this is that shot. I need my tech to come out here. I need him to do a good job. I need him to tell me everything that I need to do with this system. And, that way I can have peace of mind about the whole year or the next season, whatever that looks like. Just I want some peace of mind. This is his shot. And when we are, nah, they're not going to buy. It kind of takes away from the opportunity that they're actually giving us.
Yeah. Yeah. If you wake up in the morning and your mindset is, no one's, it's too nice out, right? No one's going to want to do anything. It's just maintenances. That's probably going to affect, right? How you go in there versus if you wake up and it's like, man, people love maintenances. People really want to take care of their system. It's where they live. The only reason why they're not is they just don't know what's going on. And now that's my piece. I'm going to come in here
Right.
and let them know what's going on. Yeah, that would change things, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's easy to look at it as cars for me because I don't really touch my car. I'll do an oil change. That's probably as far as I'll go. And I needed to take my truck into the shop because it had an oil leak. And I was just like, whatever it needs, figure out what the problem is. That way we can fix it. That way I don't have an oil leak. And they did. It was a really long list because it was a bunch of covers and gaskets. But it was just like, that was the chance to have someone look at it. I can look at it all day in my driveway and not know what I'm looking at, where it's
Mhm.
coming from, whatever. It's the same with HVAC units. Like, even if they go into the attic or the crawl space, they see all the ductwork and all that, they don't know what any of that means. I mean, I've seen air leakage where the customer goes up, occasionally into the attic to move decorations and stuff. They didn't notice the air leakage. And if they had, they were just like, it's doing what it does.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, we're that chance for making that system perform the way it should and to give them every opportunity to make it perform, you know, in a healthy way for them, so their environment's clean. And if we keep that mindset of like we're there to help them and don't limit the outside temperature, don't limit the last customer that didn't care about anything, or the way that the last customer responded to your question or something like that. If that's the one off, don't make that the rule.
Yeah. It's funny, you relate things to cars. Like I tend to relate HVAC systems to like the human body in a way, right? Where it's like, dirty ducts are like clogged arteries and, dirty
Yeah,
coils are like lungs with issues, and things like that. And right, you've got your brain and your heart, but it's the same type of idea. Like people with clogged arteries don't know that they have clogged arteries until they go in, right, and in doctor and stuff like that. But they don't know that they're heading towards something bad. But there are signs, feeling more fatigued than normal,
true.
right? And so it's kind of like the HVAC technician's role, not just to point out the clogged arteries or the dirty ducts, but to ask the questions of like, hey, have you noticed these signs?
Right.
So that's a little bit of like the mindset too, though, right? Because if you're not curious or you're not being helpful, you're just like checking boxes, you're going to miss out on a lot of conversations that are helpful to the homeowner. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a part of it too. No, that's not exactly a mindset thing. That's more of just like when you're going through your process and being consistent, it goes to this like knowing why you're asking the question.
Mm,
It's not just a checkbox. You know, how long are you hoping for the system to last? Okay, great. I'm getting to the air handler. It's a whole thing of like when you ask the question, you wait for their response. That tells you something. Like all of the questions that we ask and we're waiting for their responses help us kind of know where they're at. And it might open an opportunity where, like you're saying, you're asking about, you know, how has this been treating you? How do you feel like your ducks, every time the system comes on? This was a customer that was telling me every time his air conditioner ran, he coughed.
oh, wow.
And it's like he didn't really pay attention to that until like I was doing the tune up and then I had found some things and then he was like, "Oh wow, yeah, that's actually funny. I just scheduled a doctor's appointment because it seems like I'm coughing, but I noticed that it's every time the system comes on."
Hmm.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
important to be consistent and just keep the positive mindset of like you never know what this customer is going to do.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I do think, as you're learning things, or again, if you don't have the right mindset going in, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to ask questions to ask questions. Okay,
Right.
check. I asked that question. Now let me go do my thing that I was going to do anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Versus asking a question out of genuine care,
Hmm.
right? Of, hey, do you notice things? Well, and yeah, then you find out something like, well, maybe the homeowner didn't even connect the dots. So like, actually, come to think of it, when this thing kicks on, I cough.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're like, oh, like actually asking them questions about that and understanding, how they feel about that. And well, what else have you noticed? Like that's the type of person I want to have come to my house, right?
Yeah.
Who actually treats me like a human and is concerned about what I'm experiencing versus, hey, I cough when it comes on. They're like, okay, and then it never comes up again.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and if your mindset isn't right, if you're having a bad day, just mentally, right? You're
Right.
you're that's gonna affect how, right, the level of concern and care that you have for the homeowner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've seen that personally. I found something wrong. It was small. That was it. And I just kind of had that mindset where it's like, I don't feel like changing this right now as a capacitor. It's so close to tolerant. You know,
yeah,
it
it'll be fine.
and it was just like I never said anything. If I think about that call, I never said anything that directly said I don't want to do this today. But the customer was like, she picked up on it somehow, and she was just like, "Yeah, we'll do it next time."
Yeah, yeah,
And it's
they've
just like,
they've picked up on your energy and your feelings about it. that's something that I just strongly believe with like any type of scenario. If it's not important to you, it's not going to be important to other people, right? Any type of scenario, right? And if something's important to you, it's going to be more important to people around you because they can feel how important this is to you,
Right.
right? Whether it's leadership, or anything else, like if we're not making it important, then it's like, okay, well, it's not important. So I totally feel that of if the homeowner doesn't feel like it's important to you as the tech, why would it ever be important to them?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. John, this has
It's
been really good.
powerful.
Yeah, I love your stories and all that. We're getting to where we got to wrap this thing up. So if you had like maybe some advice for technicians about their mindset. Maybe they say, man, I do struggle with my mindset. I do struggle with my consistency. What have you learned about mindset and practicing it or thinking about it that you feel like you could share with somebody?
So there's a couple of things I guess that have worked for me. One thing I would say is if nothing else, if you could find, someone on your team that's going to be like kind of your battle buddy. When you're not in a good headspace, you talk to them, talk yourself off that ledge, whatever that looks like. The other thing is I definitely know like staying, I guess, involved with whether it's regular coaching, listening to these podcasts, or just sometimes I find myself just kind of watching or looking at or reading other inspirational things because it's like you got to stay focused on the positive. There's power in, the words you say as well as what you're allowing into your mind. And there's something that I read recently that I thought was kind of funny. Sometimes people say this, I've said it too, where when you're thinking something negative, you just got to get it out. You got to say it, you got to put it out there. That way, you got it off your chest, and now you can move on. And that doesn't mean you're telling it to the person that it involves or anything. You're just maybe complaining to a friend or something about the situation. The thing I was reading recently was talking about how you actually don't. And
Mm,
by saying it, you're giving life to it. You're actually, you know, perpetuating it. You keep it going when you really could just try to shut it down and focus on something positive and just be disciplined in your mind like that.
yeah, that's really good. John, I got to let you go. Thanks so much for being a part of the podcast. This was really great talking to you. I'm sure we could have spent much longer time, but we try to keep these things to drive time length. So, John, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you for listening to the Trusted Technician Podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.